I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Picture the man you love. The man who held your hand when you gave birth. The man who wiped your tears when your mother died. The man who said I love you every single morning for over 4 decades. Now imagine that one day, after he is gone, after you have cried every tear your body can produce, you find a box. I met Harold in 1979. I was 25 years old, working as a nurse at a county hospital in Ohio. He was 28, tall, quiet, and had the kind of smile that made you feel like everything in the world was going to be okay. He asked me out 3 times before I said yes. I remember thinking, this man is patient. This man is kind. This man is going to be a good husband someday. I was right about 2 of those things. We got married in June of 1981. Small wedding. His family, my family, a few friends, a church that smelled like old wood and hymn books. I wore my mother's dress, taken in at the waist. I cried when I saw him waiting at the altar. He cried too. And for 42 years, I believed, I truly, deeply, completely believed, that Harold James Crawford was exactly who he told me he was. A good man. A faithful husband. A devoted father to our 3 children, Daniel, Rose, and little Tommy, who we nearly lost to pneumonia when he was 4 and who still calls me every Sunday without fail. Harold worked as an accountant. He left for work every morning at 7:30. He came home every evening between 5:30 and 6. He took 2 business trips a year, once in March to a firm in Pittsburgh, once in October to a conference in Columbus. I never questioned it. Why would I? Everything made sense. Everything was consistent. Everything was a performance. Harold died on a Tuesday in February. Heart attack. He was 69 years old. The doctor said it was fast. Probably painless. He was at work, in a meeting, and simply stopped. I got the call at 11:14 in the morning. I remember looking at the clock. I remember the sound the phone made when I dropped it on the kitchen floor. I remember my neighbor Sandra coming over because she heard me screaming from next door. I did not leave the house for 3 weeks after that. My children came. My daughter Rose stayed with me for 10 days. Daniel flew in from Seattle. Tommy drove 14 hours from Georgia without stopping. They sat with me, they cooked for me, they held me while I cried. And then, slowly, they went back to their lives. Because that is what children do. That is what they are supposed to do. And I was left alone in a house full of 42 years of a man I thought I knew. Part 3, The Box. It was a Saturday when I found it. 6 months after Harold passed, I had finally decided to clean out his closet, the side he had always called his side, even though after 30 years of marriage the concept of his side seems almost funny. I was pulling out old suits. Folding them. Setting them aside for Goodwill. His gray wool blazer. His brown corduroy jacket that I always teased him about. The blue suit he wore to Daniel's wedding, and behind all of it, pushed all the way to the back, under a false bottom I had never even noticed in 42 years of living in that house, was a metal box. Plain. Gray. About the size of a shoebox. With a small combination lock. I stared at it for a long time. My first thought was, it must be insurance documents. Or maybe something financial. Harold was always private about money, not in a suspicious way, just in a I handle it so you don't have to worry way. But something in my chest already knew. 42 years of loving someone gives you a kind of instinct. A terrible instinct. The combination was his mother's birthday. I tried it without even thinking. 0317, it opened. And my entire life came apart. There were photographs. Not of me. Not of our children. Not of our life together. There was a woman. Dark hair. Pretty. Younger than me in the early photos, maybe mid-30s. And a child. A little girl with Harold's eyes and his cheekbones who grew up across the photographs from infant to teenager to young woman. There were birthday cards. Father's Day cards. Handmade ones, the kind a child makes in elementary school with crayon drawings and misspelled words. One said, "Happy Father's Day, Daddy. You are my favorite person in the world. Love, Claire." Claire. I had to sit down on the floor of that closet. I could not stand any more. There were letters. Dozens of them. The woman's name was Donna. They began in 1983, 2 years after Harold and I were married. The first letter was short, cautious. But by 1985 they were long, detailed, full of love and tenderness and words that made me feel like I was reading about a man I had never met. Harold had a daughter. A real, living, breathing daughter who called him Daddy and made him Father's Day cards and who, based on the last photograph in the box, was now a grown woman, perhaps 30 or 35 years old. He had loved her. I could see it in the way he had saved every single card, every single letter, every photograph. He had loved her the same way he loved Daniel and Rose and Tommy. He had just never told me she existed. I sat in that closet for 4 hours. I read every letter. I looked at every photograph. I turned every piece of evidence over in my hands like it was something fragile, something that might crumble if I held it too tightly. The business trip to Pittsburgh every March. The conference in Columbus every October. I started doing math in my head, terrible math, the kind of math that made me sick to my stomach. He had been visiting them. That is where he went. Not to Pittsburgh. Not to Columbus. To wherever Donna and Claire lived. I found an address in one of the older letters. A town called Millbrook. About 3 hours away. 3 hours. For 40 years, the other woman, the other family, had been 3 hours away. I called Rose that night. I told her everything. There was a long silence on the phone and then she said, very quietly, "Mama. Do you want me to come home?" I said yes. I think that was the first honest, uncomplicated thing I had said all day. Rose came home the next morning. We sat at the kitchen table with the box open between us and she read the letters the same way I had, slowly at first, then faster and faster as the shock wore off and the anger set in. My daughter is a strong woman. She has always been the one in our family who says exactly what she thinks. But that morning, for the first time in her adult life, I watched her not know what to say. Finally she looked up at me and said, "We have to find her." I had been thinking the same thing. And I had been terrified of it. Claire. This girl, this woman, with Harold's eyes. She had grown up knowing about her father. She had written him cards and letters and she had seen him twice a year and she had probably wondered, at some point in her life, whether his other family knew she existed, and the answer was no. We did not know. We never knew. Rose found her on social media within an hour. Claire Donna Patterson. 33 years old. Living in a city about 2 hours from Millbrook. A teacher. Married. 2 young children. Harold's grandchildren. Grandchildren I had never known. Rose sent her a message. Short and careful. I believe our father was Harold Crawford. I am his daughter Rose. I think we need to talk. Claire replied within 20 minutes. I have been waiting for this message for 30 years. We met her at a coffee shop halfway between our town and hers. A small place, wooden chairs, the smell of fresh bread. She walked in and I knew her immediately. Not because of the photographs, although yes, she looked exactly like them. I knew her because she walked like Harold, that same slightly hesitant step, the way of entering a room like you're not sure yet if you belong there. She sat down across from me and we both started crying before either of us said a word. I do not know how to describe that moment. There are not really words for it. Here was this woman, this beautiful, serious, sad-eyed woman __, who was as much Harold's child as any of my 3. Who had grown up missing him, counting the days until his visits, writing him letters that he treasured enough to lock in a metal box and hide for 40 years. She told me about her childhood. Her mother Donna had told her the truth when she was 8 years old. That her father was married to someone else. That he loved her very much but that he could not leave his wife and his other children. He had told Donna he would leave me. In the early letters, in the ones from 1984 and 1985, he promised. He said he was going to tell me the truth. He was going to do the right thing. He never did. And so Claire grew up knowing her father was a man who came twice a year, who loved her, who called on her birthday, who sent her school supplies and Christmas presents, and who always went home to the other family. She was not angry at me. That surprised me most of all. She was not angry at me or at Daniel or Rose or Tommy. She said, "You didn't know. None of you knew. He chose this. He made these choices. Not you." I held her hands across that coffee shop table and I thought, you deserved better than this. This woman deserved better than to grow up as a secret. Telling Daniel was the hardest. He adored his father. Harold was his hero, the man he had modeled his entire adult life after. When I told him, he did not speak for a very long time. And then he said, "I need some time, Mama." And he hung up the phone. He did not call back for 4 days. When he did, his voice was different. Older somehow. Heavier. "I don't know how to feel about this," he said. "I keep waiting to feel something definite. Angry, or sad, or something. But it just keeps shifting." "That's grief," I told him, "but this time we're grieving something that was never quite what we thought it was." Tommy took it differently. Tommy has always been my most emotional child, the one who cries at commercials and rescues stray animals and calls his mother every Sunday. He cried. And then, after a long time, he said something that I have thought about every day since. Does it change the good things? Does it make the good things not real? I thought about that question for days now. The good things were real. Harold loved us. I believe that, still. He loved us, and he also kept a terrible secret, and both of those things are true at the same time. That is what makes it so hard to carry. I had not expected to want to meet Donna. But Claire asked me, gently, whether I would be willing. Donna is 67 now. She never married. She raised Claire alone, in a small house, working as a bookkeeper, waiting twice a year for a man who was never really hers to keep. When I saw her I expected to feel rage. I had rehearsed rage. I had practiced it in the mirror in the bathroom at 3 in the morning when I could not sleep. But what I felt, sitting across from this quiet, tired woman, was something much closer to grief. She had been deceived too. Not in the same way I had. She always knew about me. But she had been promised a future that never arrived. She had spent her best years waiting for a man to choose her, and he never did. We are not friends. I do not think we will ever be friends, but we sat together for 2 hours, and we talked, and at the end of it she said to me, "I am sorry. I have wanted to say that to you for 40 years. I am so sorry." I did not say it was okay. Because it was not okay. But I said, "Thank you for raising her well. Claire is extraordinary. And that is because of you." We both cried. And then we went back to our separate lives. It has been a year and a half since I found that box. Claire came to Thanksgiving. She sat at my table and carved the turkey alongside Daniel, and she made her children call me Grandma Margaret, and I watched Tommy trying very hard not to cry into his green beans. It was strange. And it was sad. And it was also, somehow, in a way I am still struggling to understand, it was right. Claire is Harold's daughter. She deserved to know her siblings. She deserved to sit at the table. I will not tell you I have forgiven Harold. That is too large a word right now. Maybe too large a word ever, but I have decided something. I have decided that I will not let the lie swallow the truth. The truth is that I had 42 years of a man who made breakfast on Sundays and fixed the leaking pipe under the kitchen sink and sat beside me in the hospital when my father was dying and held my hand through every hard thing life threw at us. That was real. I was loved. Imperfectly, dishonestly, in a way that breaks my heart, but I was loved, and so was Claire. And there is a kind of terrible sadness in that. But also, maybe, if I am very patient with myself, a kind of grace. I am 71 years old. I have seen a lot of life. I have learned that people are capable of extraordinary love and extraordinary cruelty, and sometimes, most painfully, both at the same time. If you are carrying a secret, I want to ask you something. Not as a judgment. As a woman who watched a secret outlive the person who kept it and go on to hurt everyone he ever loved. Is whatever you are protecting worth the box? Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched your heart, please subscribe, and come back next time. Because the truth, even when it hurts, deserves to be told. Take care of yourselves. And take care of each other.